Welcome, everybody, to the very first episode of TestaTalksSports. I'm your host, Mike Testa, and for our first show today, we're going to be diving into one of the biggest sporting events of the year beginning tomorrow, I guess today, really, with Wimbledon. I'm taping this the morning of the first round of Wimbledon. It's one of my favorite sporting events of the year. I'm a big tennis buff, so we're going to get into it here a little bit during the dog days of summer, where it's just tennis, baseball, a little bit of golf involved, but yeah, we're going to get into Wimbledon here, starting off with the men's singles. So here's some notes. So obviously Carlos Alcaraz is the two-time defending champion here at Wimbledon, looking for a three-peat. He beat Novak Djokovic in each of the last two men's finals. What I'm looking for here is obviously Sinner. How does Sinner bounce back after the crushing Roland Garros loss a month ago to Alcaraz? Sinner's still the number one seed in all these tournaments, but Alcaraz is the favorite, the odds-on favorite at plus 120 to win Wimbledon for the third straight year. Sinner, again, you can make the argument Sinner should have won that Roland Garros match. He was up 2-0. Sinner's been dominating all the hard courts, but he has yet to win a Wimbledon final. Did beat Carlos on grass here in Wimbledon a few years ago in the quarterfinals, but he's yet to make it to a final in Wimbledon. He's yet to win a final in Wimbledon. I still think he's the best tennis player alive. However, how does he bounce back after that crushing 5-set loss in the Roland Garros final, over 5 hours of mayhem to Alcaraz? And can he beat Alcaraz? He's obviously had so much success on hard courts, but again, like I said, has not yet won on clay or on grass. He'll have a chance to do that this week, or in the next coming weeks, I should say. Some dark horses here in the men's singles. It's really, here's the thing, with the men's, it's really a three-team race. I mean, the women's is way more wide open. If you just look at the odds here presented by Hard Rock, Alcaraz plus 120, Sinner plus 190, Djokovic is plus 650. Obviously, he owns this court. And then you get a distant fourth favorite in Jack Draper, the UK kid here at plus 1,300 in front of his hometown. After that, it's really, I mean, if you want to take Zverev, Fritz, Musetti, I mean, it's not really Ben Shelton if you want to throw America in there. There's not really anyone besides these top three guys that can win it, I don't think. But if we want to go by quarter here, obviously Sinner's quarter, he's the massive favorite to get out of it. It's Sinner minus 425. He's got Musetti, his Italian, also in this quarter. Ben Shelton, Tommy Paul. So it's a pretty good quarter, but obviously Sinner's the massive favorite. It's hard to say you don't like Sinner out of this grouping here to get to the semifinals with relative ease. I don't really love Ben Shelton's path. I like Ben Shelton, but I think his path is a little bit tricky. I mean, if the matchups hold, he could possibly face a David Goffin in round 2. I think he's really good on grass. That's a sneaky one. If he can get past him, and then you get guys like, I mean, again, Tommy Paul. I would actually favor Tommy Paul. The only problem is he would run into Sinner before Shelton would. So he would run into Sinner in the round of 16 or before the quarterfinals, whatever that is. So Paul's a distant favorite here at plus 1,500, but I actually think Paul could make a run here. Again, he have to avoid Sinner. Obviously, that's the elephant in the room here. Sinner's going to cakewalk through this quarter. I would think Musetti and Paul would be interesting if they get that round of 16 matchup. If the bracket holds, which kind of assuming that these guys will make their way there. Musetti's really good. He got to a semifinal at Wimbledon a couple years back. Or actually, I think he made it last year to semifinals of Wimbledon. But yeah, I mean, this is a Sinner group, so we don't have to spend too much time on that one. Then you get Djokovic. Djokovic only minus 120 to get out of this quarter. He's obviously got Jack Draper in this group. Who by the way will have the crowd on his side, obviously being from the UK. And then Bublik's in this group. Bublik's really good on grass. And then De Minaur, but that's really about it. This group has no depth. I mean, it's Djokovic, Draper, Bublik, and De Minaur, and then it's nothing. I mean, you could talk yourself into, I'm not sure you're gonna find maybe you'll find a dark horse out of this group just because there's not really much depth, and maybe you'll get a fifth guy. It's like, oh wow, he made a run, but it's Djokovic. Djokovic is going to cruise to at the very least the quarterfinals because there's no one in his way. I mean, up until the round of 16, he might face De Minaur, and De Minaur is not going to give him any trouble at all. So Djokovic can kind of just, reserve tickets for the quarterfinal where you'll get Draper or possibly Bublik, but it's pretty smooth sailing pretty smooth path for Novak here to get to the quarters. I mean, they don't give him any trip mines here in this group, really. Draper and Bublik are on the other side of on the other half of the quarter, so he wouldn't have to face those guys until the quarters. So, if you're Novak, you can talk yourself into, hey, we can get to the semis. We can get out of this group pretty easily. It's just Draper and Bublik, and that's really the only trip mines there. He's not losing to Demon Or in the round of 16. That's not happening. And then you get to the Alcaraz quarter. This one is stacked. They stacked this one up. I like a lot of guys in this quarter, but obviously Alcaraz is the heavy favorite to get out of it at minus 500. Holger Rune is in this one. That would be, if the matchups hold and the higher seed wins in all these, it'd be the 8 seed Holger Rune against Alcaraz, the 2 seed in the quarters for a trip to the semifinals on the line. That would be really interesting. Tsitsipas is in this group. Rublev's in this group. Big Francis Tiafoe is in this group. Big Felix, the Canadians in this group. I like Lerner Tien. I like Nicholas Jarry. I like Cam Norrie. Cam Norrie, former Wimbledon semifinalist a couple years ago. Fonseca's in this group. I mean, you got a lot of guys in this group that have had success here before. Obviously, Cam Norrie has fallen from high highs, but yeah, first round matchup that's pretty interesting here. Cam Norrie against Bautista Agut. Both of these guys, former Wimbledon semifinalists. Bautista Agut lost to Novak in 2019 in the Wimbledon semifinals. Cam Norrie lost to Novak in the 2022 Wimbledon semifinals. So they both had success. They both had long runs at Wimbledon before. One of them's going to go home in the first round. And again, I'm taping this the morning of the first round, so it's possible that one of them's already gone. I don't know if they're playing today or tomorrow, but yeah. And then obviously in the first round, we got Holger Rune against Nicholas Jarry. Nicholas Jarry, again, he's another guy. He's made a long run before. I think he made it to the round of 16 before here at Wimbledon. And Rune obviously is one of the more talented young players in the world. He's seated 8th right now. And then you got Rublev against Laszlo Jarry. I think that, again, if you're looking for like a plus 400 kind of upset, I like Jarry there to possibly beat Rublev. Rublev's really been struggling. I think he's seated 14 right now, but that's not a cakewalk. I think Laszlo's got a really good serve. Now again, Laszlo Jarry is plus 20,000 to get out of the group. He's not gonna get out of the group, obviously. But it's like a trendy first round upset. Maybe could see him upsetting Rublev. I mean, I wouldn't put my money on it, but you could possibly talk yourself into it. And then there's the wide open group here. This is the only quarter where there's not like a minus money guy here. Zverev is the favorite to get out of the group at plus 200, and I wouldn't touch that with how Zverev has been breaking down recently at Wimbledon. Then you get Medvedev at plus 350, followed by Fritz at plus 425. So it's kind of like a 3-horse race, but none of these guys are minus money like you see with Sinner, Alcaraz, and Djokovic. I would bet on Fritz here, even though I looked at Fritz's path last night. It's not an easy path at all. He'd have to get through some heavy hitters. Kachanov's in this group. Popyrin's in this group. I like Popyrin a lot. Berrettini's really good on grass. He's in this group too. I don't think those guys are going to get out of the quarter, but there's also Fritz would have to face possibly Davidovich Fokina, who's really good on grass as well. So there's some trip mines here. But overall, if you told me that Taylor Fritz was in like the round of 16 against Medvedev, I'm not so sure I wouldn't pick Fritz. And then if you told me he plays Zverev in the quarterfinals, he owns Zverev on grass. He's beaten Zverev like 3 times in a row on grass. So I'm not so sure I wouldn't pick him against Zverev there either. I think Zverev's obviously the best player in this group, but I wouldn't trust him to get out of this. I mean, you got some serious Medvedev's in this group and Fritz is in this group. That's not like Zverev can't just be like, oh, I can just coast to the semis, because either one of those guys could obviously beat him and have beat him. Medvedev in a normal year, I'd be like, okay, Medvedev's getting to the semifinals. He usually just does. That being said, he's, again, talk about falling from grace. He's I don't know what's going on with Medvedev. But if you told me he's in the semifinals and gets crushed by Alcaraz, I'd be like, yeah, that checks out. Because whoever wins this quarter is going to get smashed in the semifinals by Alcaraz. That's happening. I don't see Fritz beating him. I don't see Medvedev. Medvedev's obviously not beating Alcaraz on grass. That's not happening. We've seen that plenty of times. That's not happening. Zverev, I don't see Zverev beating Alcaraz on grass. I mean, none of these guys are beating. Assuming Alcaraz gets out of his quarter, these guys are all just semifinalist losers at that point. And then if the matchups hold, you get Sinner and Novak Djokovic in the upper half of the semis, or possibly if someone can get out of that Djokovic group besides him, like Draper possibly. But either way, Sinner would be the favorite on that end. But a Sinner Djokovic semifinal would be crazy, considering how much success Djokovic has had on this grass court. And Sinner not having gotten to a Wimbledon final yet, that'd be an immense amount of pressure on Sinner if it is indeed Sinner and Novak in the semis. And then, like I said, with this semis, if it's Alcaraz against, Fritz, who I'm going to go Fritz here, but if it's Fritz, Zverev, or Medvedev, you can just kind of shoe in Carlos to put him in the final there for the third year in a row. And then we'll briefly go over the women's here. Women's one is completely wide open. I've never seen it this wide open. Usually you have like a heavy favorite like an Iga Swiatek, or Sabalenka's the odds-on favorite, but can Sabalenka keep her cool for 7 straight rounds? I'm not so sure. Without taking out a racket or a couple of her coaches? I don't know. Can Coco Gauff finally conquer the grass? She just conquered clay for the first time in her career. She hasn't had as much success on grass. She lost to Emma Navarro, who really... Emma Navarro's been really good on grass. Talk about a sneaky American who can possibly make another deep run. Navarro's been really good here. Jasmine Paolini's been awesome in these kind of tournaments. So I like Paolini, not to win it, but I think Paolini could obviously make the semifinals again. She made it last year, and she actually she won one of the craziest semifinal matches I've ever seen in Wimbledon's tennis. Period. Actually, men's or women's. It's one of the best semifinals ever when she took out Donna Vekic in that crazy semifinal, and then she lost to Barbara Krivkovic, whoever. I don't like watching Barbara. Whoever won, the girl who won it last year, Krejcikovic. I'm not a fan of her game, but she did lose to, or Paolini did lose to her in the Wimbledon final last year. But I think Paolini could easily get herself back to the final. She's just really good. As far as like the top ranked in the worlds, Swiatek. In a normal year, I'd be like, yeah, Swiatek. Put her in the semis or whatever. But her serve's just not there. And at this point of the year, you got to have a consistent serve. And hers really isn't there. That's why I like Rybakina, the grass queen, to once again reign supreme at Wimbledon. Her serve is just so good. She's just so consistent. I'll take Rybakina. I'm a Rybakina guy. I love Rybakina. Maybe she'll lose to someone she shouldn't lose to. That usually does happen. But she's just the most consistent player here, I think. And again, her serve is it's the best. It's the best on tour. So I really like Rybakina. Sabalenka is the odds-on favorite, which, again, she probably should be. She's the most talented player here. But I would worry about Sabalenka. If it was like a Sabalenka-Rybakina match, I would... So Sabalenka would be favored, but, you can't think, but in the back of your mind, will Sabalenka just break down in the second or third set and just be like, completely lose it? Rybakina is just stone cold, no facial expressions, her emotions never change. I just would favor that in the 3-set, affair over a Sabalenka or someone like that. So I really like Rybakina there. But again, like I said, the women's one is so wide open. You had Emma Raducanu last year make a deep run, I think, to the round of 16 or the quarterfinals. Again, UK zone. So yeah, it's wide open. You can get someone like that can just make a run out of nowhere in the women's, because it's like, again, at the top, it's not as clear cut as like a Sinner, Alcaraz, Djokovic. You got Coco Gauff, who just won Roland Garros, but she hasn't really done that well at Wimbledon, at least not yet. And again, you have Swiatek, you have Andreeva, you have Paolini, again, Sabalenka, I already mentioned her, and then Rybakina, obviously. But it's kind of like, yeah, one of those girls can obviously win the whole thing, but it's like not as like, yeah, just go ahead and pencil them in. So, but yeah, that's Wimbledon. And real quick, I guess we'll talk about the Blockbuster trade that happened just like 20 minutes ago. Steelers and Dolphins trade. They exchange all-pro defensive backs. So Minkah Fitzpatrick goes back to Miami, where it all started. Jalen Ramsey goes to Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh gets Jonnu Smith. And they immediately give him a 1-year extension for $12 million. So the Dolphins have no tight ends at the moment. They were not willing to bring back Jonnu, who had a Pro Bowl year last year. And obviously we knew Ramsey was getting traded. That contract was just getting too large. He's about to be 31, I think. So I have no issues with moving off of him. And then you get Minkah, which, you got to applaud that. The safety room is now fixed. You're able to completely revamp the safety room. You get an all-pro safety in Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's still only 28. Ify Melifonwu, I like him. If he can just stay healthy, so they bring him in from Detroit. They bring in Ashton Davis from the Jets. I like the safety room. I'm not going to lie. I think it's a pretty good room. Problem is the Dolphins have by far and away the worst corners in football. It's not even close at this point. It's Darth Cater. It's Storm Duck. It's Cam Smith. It's rough. It's looking rough. And then again, like I said, tight ends, you got Julian Hill and Pharaoh Brown. So it's basically just created players at this point playing tight ends and corner roomers at this point. But again, maybe they can trade for like a Michael Mayer. Maybe they can trade for Kyle Pitts. I'm not ruling it out. But as of right now, on paper, the Dolphins, I believe, are worse today than they were yesterday. At least from if you just look at two rooms, their cornerback room is absolutely decimated, which we knew it would be after they traded Ramsey. So I'm not going to. We learned nothing about that. We knew the corner room was a disaster because we knew Ramsey was not going to come back. But then you lose Jonnu, and I think that's the bigger story here. You lose Jonnu, and you don't have anyone after Jonnu that can even replicate that production, unless there's a trade that's coming that hasn't happened yet. But most of the offensive production last year was Jonnu. It was Jonnu and A-Chain. Waddle and Tyreek really had rough years. Both of them were banged up a little bit and did not have good years. Tua's most consistent pass catcher was Jonnu. So they didn't bring in anybody that can replicate Jonnu's production. Maybe Westbrook Akine is like the deep threat receiver that they like a lot. I like Westbrook Akine, but as far as the tight end position, I mean, you have a blocking tight end. You brought in Pharaoh Brown as a blocking tight end, and then Julian Hill can't do anything. He's not good. So, at least offensively, they're worse today. Defensively, I like their safety room a lot, but corners, good luck going against Josh Allen with no corners. I mean, it's just a tough ask in this division, in this conference with such good quarterbacks to not have a corner that you really can consistently be like, yeah, we'll put him on the number one receiver. We'll put him on Jamar Chase. We'll put him on, Stephon Diggs, who's on the Patriots now, or someone like that. We'll put him on, Lad McConkey, whatever. These AFC teams that are good that you'll have to face. Who are you going to put on those guys? Who are you going to put on DK Metcalf when you play Pittsburgh? It's just tough. But that's basically it for the first episode. We'll take a quick break and then we'll get into some NBA stuff. But that's the Wimbledon recap. Like I said, I'm taping this before the first round started, so maybe there's gonna be some upsets when this thing comes out. That maybe I look stupid. Maybe Sinner's already gonna be out. I don't know. But that was the Wimbledon recap. A little bit of Dolphins Steelers, and yeah. All right, welcome back, everybody, to TestaTalksSports, and so we got to dive into this NBA free agency stuff. Despite the free agent class being pretty lackluster, I mean, considering this new CBA, the best free agent in the class was arguably Miles Turner, or of the unsigned ones, maybe Jonathan Kuminga or Josh Giddey. But nonetheless, the offseason's still off to a pretty crazy start. We're only 2 days into the free agency period. Obviously, the offseason started much before then for some other teams. And we'll get into that. Just real quick, we're going to go over some winners and some losers because that's kind of what you have to do. I mean, again, we're only 2 days in, but just some early, because this is where the offseason, this is really where the meat and potatoes of the offseason is right after the draft, first couple days of free agency, who got better, who got worse, because there's not many moves to make after that. I mean, most teams' rosters are set at that point. So real quick here, we'll go over some winners. This is an easy winner here. The Denver Nuggets. This was the big move, honestly, on night one of free agency. It wasn't even a free agent pickup. It was the trade that the Nuggets made with Brooklyn to acquire Cam Johnson. They sent away Michael Porter Jr. and a 2032 unprotected first-round pick. So we'll see how that pick is in 2032. Jokic will be 38 years old. I guess it's good for Brooklyn, but the guy's a 7th grader right now, so you're fine with giving that up if you're Denver. You have a window here. You got to go for it. This was just an incredible... I still can't believe that the Denver Nuggets were able to pull this off. Again, Cam Johnson makes $13 million less than MPJ, which also allows Denver to get more pieces, like a Bruce Brown. They were able to sign Bruce Brown to the vet minimum on night one of free agency. They were able to then, the very next day, trade an unplayable big guy in Dario Saric, and he turned him into Jonas Valanciunas. We've been how many times have we been harping on Denver for years to get a real backup center anytime Jokic goes to the bench? Now they get one in Jonas Valanciunas. And then they pick up Tim Hardaway Jr., a sharpshooting guy who just fits perfectly with Jokic, and they get him for that minimum. And again, this is like a slam dunk first couple of days for Denver, because I think if you ask most Nuggets fans, or if you just ask most people around the league, they would be like, well, what would be considered a good offseason for Denver? Because how are they going to improve their roster? People thought they were pretty stuck. I mean, nobody wanted Michael Porter Jr.'s contract. At least we assumed. Their bench was terrible. So it was like, okay, how is Denver going to get a better bench? Because we really didn't think they could possibly move off of MPJ. It just didn't seem realistic. And they did. Not only did they move off of MPJ, they turned him into Cam Johnson, who's an improvement. He's a better player. At least he's a better fit in this team. He's a 3-and-D player, and there's a little bit more shot creation to his game. And again, it's a better fit with Jokic, especially with some of the defensive stuff as well. Porter could have some lackluster effort at times. Cam Johnson's going to be locked in. There's not going to be any mental stuff with Because again, the Porter thing, there was some games last year where it's like, is he engaged at all, or you're not going to get that kind of issue with Cam Johnson. So they arguably got an improvement there. I don't think it's arguable. They got an improvement there, and they got him for $13 million less. That's the thing. Moving off of MPJ, it wasn't just moving off MPJ for Cam Johnson. It was that you create a more cap space. You freed up $13 million to get a Bruce Brown and to get a Tim Hardaway Jr., and they still have their taxpayer mid-level exception, so they can still go out and get another ball-handling backup point guard if they want. Now, there's not many left. Trey Mann just going back to Charlotte. Schroeder went to Sacramento. So there's not many left, but they still have that option if they want to. And again, they can still make another trade. So Denver was this is a slam dunk first couple days. And again, quick reminder, this Denver Nuggets team last year took Oklahoma City, the defending champions now, to 7 games with Aaron Gordon on one hamstring, Michael Porter Jr.'s shoulder being silly putty. His shoulder was just absolutely cooked. And they had 0 bench. I mean, again, it was Westbrook, and Westbrook had some roller coaster games last year. It was Julian Strawther who had a nice game 6, but that's they didn't really trust him. They only played 2 guys off the bench. They didn't even play Peyton Watson. It was just Westbrook and Strawther off the bench. So Denver, the fact that they were able to take a 10-deep Oklahoma City team to 7 games with an injured Aaron Gordon, an injured Michael Porter Jr., and no bench is really impressive. And again, they actually got off to a pretty good start. They got off to a fine start in Game 7 until they had to bring in their bench. Basically, the second that Jokic sat, everything fell apart for Denver. That's not going to happen. No, that's no longer going to happen because they bring in some serious players here. I saw this on, I think it was Instagram. I think it was NBA In Depth. He said something like, Denver's new front office did more to build around Nikola Jokic than Calvin Booth did in the 2 years post-championship. Calvin Booth, the former GM for Denver, who got fired late in the year with Michael Malone, the head coach. And he's right. I mean, it's just crazy how Denver wins their championship and they kind of just sit on they rest on their laurels, and they basically don't do anything. They let Bruce Brown walk for nothing. They don't replace him. They just kind of replaced him with Christian Brown, who came off the bench, and they just kind of inserted him into that role. Then they lose KCP for nothing. He goes to Orlando. They don't replace him at all. So they kind of they're like, yeah, one championship is good. This new Denver front office immediately comes in and makes some stuff happen. I'm shocked they were able to pull it off, but they're the easy slam dunk winners of the offseason so far. I mean, they could do nothing the rest of the offseason. It's like, okay, immediately Denver is now a more serious team because they addressed all their needs and they somehow got better and got off Michael Porter Jr.'s contract. The next one here is obviously the Houston Rockets. They have done nothing wrong so far in the free agency. They added Kevin Durant. They traded for him. This is obviously before free agency. This was the day of the NBA Finals. They traded for Durant, but we didn't really talk about that. He solves all their issues basically. He solves their lack of half court offensive scoring, their shot creation. They didn't have any shot creation, which is really why none of us, at least not a lot of people, picked them to beat Golden State in a Game 7. They could win the series, but in the 7th game, Game 7s are all about half court offense, who can get a bucket, who can get to their spot. And they didn't have a guy like that. So that's why I was like, okay, when you're going against a guy like Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler, that other team has 2 guys who in the half court, when the game slows down, can get their own shot. Houston had nobody. So now they have Durant, who's arguably the best in the world at that, just getting his own shot. They had Dorian Finney-Smith, who's an awesome 3-and-D wing, fits their team perfectly. They have a lot of 3-and-D wings anyways, but you can never have enough of them. So I'm shocked that the Lakers let him go. We'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, Finney-Smith's an awesome spot-up shooter who can really defend. Houston's got a ton of these guys, like I just said. They have a bunch of these guys. And then they bring in Clint Capella. Clint Capella's not good anymore, but and again, I'd put money that he doesn't make their playoff rotation. But nonetheless, I mean, Houston's basically saying, you know what, we're going to get every offensive rebound, which is what they did last year, basically. They were so bad in the half-court offense. They got every offensive rebound, kept kicking it out and missing more shots and then getting another offensive rebound. Because now they have 2 of the best offensive rebounders in the game. And Clint Capella and Steven Adams is the best offensive rebounder in the game, maybe outside of Mitchell Robinson. So even if Houston's missing shots, which they shouldn't miss as many shots as they did last year, because their half-court offense was just terrible last year. Thankfully, they were the best offensive rebounding team in basketball because that's really the only thing that saved them. That was their saving grace, was the offensive glass. And they're going to be just as good, if not better, this year on the offensive glass. They may not need to because they have some actual bucket getters now. With Durant, you bring in Finney-Smith, you re-up Fred VanVleet. So yeah, Houston just has crushed it so far. They were a 2 seed last year, and they're a better team this year. They may not be a 2 seed this year again, but they are inarguably a better basketball team this year than they were last year because they fixed their half-court offensive issue. They kept Steven Adams, who was a free agent. They kept VanVleet, and they bring in Finney-Smith, which I never would have expected them to get Finney-Smith. I figured the Lakers would lock him up. They did not. Orlando, I think, is another big winner. They added Tyus Jones. I just think that's like that's exactly who Orlando needed. These are not like blockbuster moves, but Orlando added Tyus Jones, which is just a perfect guard, complementary to Jalen Suggs, who's an awesome defender. Tyus, not the defender Jalen Suggs is, but he's just an awesome facilitator. Everyone talks about his assist-to-turnover ratio. He's just one of the best in the league at not turning the ball over and just finding guys. And Orlando did not have anyone last year who can facilitate. They had no one who can set up anyone's shots. It was basically Banchero was like, can you run the point a little bit? Can you get everyone into their stuff? And that was not going to work well. They also obviously bring in Desmond Bane. This is the trade before. This is before free agency, but Bane's a perfect fit. We already know that. They needed three-point shooting badly, and he's one of the best spot-up three-point shooters in the league. And then they bring in Jace Richardson. Jace Richardson fell in the draft. This is not a free agency move, but I thought Orlando's just been crushing the offseason with getting Jace Richardson at 24 or 25, whatever he fell to. Another perfect three-level scorer for Orlando. Orlando just needed scoring, and they go out and get Tyus Jones, Desmond Bane, and Jace Richardson, who can all score, and they're all offensive players. But Orlando had a great defensive team anyway, so this is why they had to focus on offense. They already had Suggs, who's a defensive menace. They had Isaac. They had Banchero, Franz. I mean, they already have defensive guys. So they bring in an offensive. They bring in all these guards like Tyus Jones, Bane, and Richardson. This is exactly what Orlando needed. And these guys are going to replace the Cole Anthonys of the world and all those other players. So I think Orlando's just crushed it. And then when the wide open East, you can't say that they're not one of the contenders to get out of there. And then the last one I think is Atlanta. This is another easy one. Atlanta's had a great offseason so far. They bring in Porzingis, which say what you want about Porzingis, but it's low risk, high reward. It's an expiring deal anyways. So if he's not good, you're not locked into him for, however long. But, this is a guy with pick and pop with Trae Young in the pick and roll. That you can see why it'd be a high reward trade. Because if Porzingis is right, he's got this mystery injury that we don't know about. But if he's right, this is obviously going to be a win for Atlanta. They bring in Nickeil Alexander-Walker, one of the best point of attack defenders in the league, which is exactly what you needed to pair up with Trae Young. Now, they already have Dyson Daniels, but you can never have enough elite point of attack defenders. So now they got Dyson Daniels, they got NAW, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They got Jalen Johnson coming back from injury, Risa Shea. I mean, if they want to go, a defensive lineup down the stretch, like if they're up by 2 with 20 seconds left, and the other team has the ball, and Atlanta just needs to stop, you can go with an NAW, Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, Risa Shea, and Onyeka Okongwu defensive lineup to close the game. Or Porzingis if you want, but you don't have to even have Trae in the game at the end of the games because you have a defensive team around Trae Young now, who's obviously a liability on that end. But Atlanta's got a squad now, and they also bring in Luke Kennard. Luke Kennard's got some playmaking to him as well. If you saw when Ja went out for Memphis last year, Kennard was able to kind of facilitate and play make a little bit. So they're just taking pressure off of Trae Young, which is what we've been saying they needed to do for years now. And then I think the Knicks only made one. They made 2 moves actually. They got Jordan Clarkson on the first night, which is kind of what I've been saying they needed since they lost in the conference finals. I'm like, okay, you can't play Cam Payne any more minutes. Anytime Brunson sits, they're cooked. They can't score. And New York's offense is so stagnant whenever Brunson goes to the bench. So you bring in a guy like Jordan Clarkson who can really heat it up and score off the bench for you. Perfect fit there. Now again, they just hired Mike Brown like 10 minutes ago. Tibbs would have loved to have a guy like Jordan Clarkson. So I think Knicks are better off now because I don't think they got better at head coach, but they have a better roster than they did last year. So you'd always rather have the better roster than the head coach. So they bring in Jordan Clarkson. They bring in Yabusele, the dancing bear, who's awesome. So the Knicks only made 2 signings, but they're good signings. So they are definitely a better team today than they were a month ago when they lost to Indiana. They don't have as good a coach. I think Tibbs is a better coach than Mike Brown. But again, you'd rather just improve the roster. Coaching is not as important as just having a better team. So, but again, I think if this was the same roster with Tibbs, I think New York would be like, okay. Now again, they did have some injury luck last year. Like a lot of the Knicks players stayed healthy. Mitchell Robinson did not get injured at all in the playoffs. OG Anunoby did not get injured at all in the playoffs. Brunson, remember, he got injured in the Pacers series the year before. He stayed healthy. Randall obviously got injured the year before the playoffs even started. Cat stayed healthy this year. So they had some injury luck. Obviously, Mikal Bridges is an Iron Man. But for Anunoby to stay healthy, for Mitchell Robinson to stay healthy for like 3 straight rounds, I mean, can you bank on that again? Maybe not. But those guys stayed healthy, and you're hoping that they can do the same thing this year. Because usually with Tibbs teams, those teams break down later in the year. They did not last year, so credit to them. But And Mike Brown's obviously one of the best offensive coaches in the league. And the Knicks had to get better offensively. Their offense last year was just Jalen Brunson dribbling the air out of the shot clock and running pick and rolls with Cat. I mean, it wasn't very innovative. There was not a lot of movement. They ran into a team like Indiana who actually runs offense. They don't run plays, but they run it's a bunch of off-ball movement, body movement, ball movement. Everyone touches the ball. And the Knicks need a little more of that. So I like the Mike Brown hire. I just think, the roster is better today than it was a couple weeks ago. Which, if the roster was better today than it was a couple weeks ago, you could have just had Tibbs and been the favorite in the East, probably. So I just didn't think it was really necessary to fire him. But either way. And then the losers here, there's a few. I think Sacramento probably is. I mean, again, they give Schroeder 3 years, $45 million. It's just why? And again, if history tells us anything, Schroeder will probably be flipped at the deadline for something. He's always trading. He's always getting traded at the deadline. So Schroeder probably ends up getting traded at the deadline to go to some contender. I mean, we always every postseason we end up seeing Schroeder on our screens. So, and if he stays in Sacramento, we won't be seeing him in the playoffs next year. But it's just like I don't really understand if you're Sacramento why you need to get 3 years, $45 million of Dennis Schroeder. I know they needed a point guard bad, but this is a team that had Fox and Halliburton, by the way, and they drafted a point guard, Devin Carter. So they had point guards, and then they just gave them all away. Now they're going for Dennis Schroeder. It just feels like it's a couple years late if they wanted. But again, they need point guards so bad. It just doesn't really make any sense. It's like what is Sacramento doing right now? They're not. This team screams play-in, maybe. And they were the 9 seed last year, lost in the 9-10 play-in game. They'll be lucky to get right back there. I mean, maybe a 10 seed. I don't really understand what their direction is. They still have Levine. They're going to trade DeRozan. It just doesn't really. The team doesn't really make any sense. It's basically the Western Conference Chicago Bulls. So I don't love any move that suggests that they want to. This move suggested that they're going to go in the play-in again. They bring in Schroeder. It's just like I don't know. It's just kind of pointless to me. I would love to see Schroeder go to a team that actually needs him, which he very well could get flipped anyways at the deadline. Like they could flip him to the Hawks. The Hawks could use a backup point guard. So again, there's the Knicks already fit, but there's teams that could have imagine Denver with Schroeder. I would have loved to see that, but Sacramento gets him, and it feels kind of pointless. Detroit has had a weird offseason. They gave Duncan Robinson 3 years, $48 million. Apparently we live in an age where Duncan Robinson's making more money than Ty Jerome. Which is interesting. Ty Jerome was the best sixth man in basketball, or second best sixth man in basketball last year. They give Karis LeVert $14.5 million a year. Okay, I guess. They're gearing up to lose Malik Beasley, who's got this gambling scandal over his head. But I just feel like if you were going to do that, I would have hoped that they could have got a bigger fish. But I guess they want to recreate him. I mean, Duncan's a good spot up shooter. LeVert's fine. Just not at these numbers. I don't love these deals they're giving out. Now, again, the big thing with Detroit is they're getting Jaden Ivey back. That's really their big offseason acquisition. They're not because they didn't have him for the playoffs last year. It's a little bit like Indiana last year when they didn't have Mathurin for the entire postseason run they made to the conference finals. They didn't have Mathurin. They bring in obviously Mathurin's healthy for this year's playoffs. They get to the finals and almost win the game. They almost win Game 7. So again, if you're Detroit, you're hoping maybe we don't have to make a big splash because we have Ivey coming back and we like Ivey and Cade and Duren. I guess that's what you're hoping for, but I just feel like they could have done a little bit more. And again, with these numbers, Duncan, LeVert, is that really moving the needle? Maybe in the East it is. I don't know, but I didn't love that. I didn't love these deals, honestly. And then a couple teams here that I don't know if they're losers per se. They just didn't really get anything they needed, and that's Golden State and the Lakers. Obviously, they both needed size. They both needed big guys, and the market is drying up. Golden State hasn't done anything. They actually lost Looney, which I mean it's not a big deal, but that just means their average height of their team is even smaller than it was a couple days ago. So Golden State has no big guy. Lopez goes to the Clippers. I think the Lakers caught a break there because he's terrible. But the Lakers still don't have a center. it's Maxi Kleber, who's like a stretch five, but I mean not a starter. So Ayton's still out there, I guess, if that's the direction they're going in. But yeah, the Lakers and Warriors did not get anyone they really needed. I mean, and again, the Lakers, I would call them losers not because they didn't get a center. Obviously, they needed a center, but they didn't even retain Finney-Smith. If they had just retained Finney-Smith, I would have been like, okay, the Lakers, they're bringing back a playoff team at least, because they were a 3 seed last year, but they weren't really a title contender. But they don't bring back Finney-Smith. They bring in LaRavia for 2 years and $12 million, which again, LaRavia is not as good as Finney-Smith. Maybe he will be in 3 years, but that's not on LeBron's timeline. LeBron doesn't care about that. So it almost feels like the Lakers are apparently they're gearing up for 2027 cap space, which I don't really know why you would need that. You're banking on free agents to come here in 2027. I mean, it feels a little risky because in the new CBA, the free agent classes are not very good anymore. So like everyone's just getting extended before free agency hits. So And again, LeBron won't be there in 2027, so he obviously does not cater to that timeline. I guess, again, it's more, they're more catering towards the Luka timeline. If they're figuring about 2027, okay, we don't need to spend money this offseason, let's just wait for the 2027 offseason. Again, that's not even 20, that's 2 offseasons from now. So it just feels like you're kind of wasting Luka's prime here if you're bringing back, you're not even bringing back Finney Smith. You're bringing in LaRavia, you still don't have a center. This doesn't really feel like a team that can contend in the West, as of right now. I mean, there's not many moves left to make. So we'll see. And then Indiana, I thought, is a loser here. Just losing Miles Turner is a loss. You lose the asset here. I mean, you have to at least bring him. You have to at least sign him. Maybe sign and trade. That's when I first saw he went to the Bucks, which is shocking. I figured, okay, it's got to be a sign and trade. So at least when Indiana's gonna get something. They can't just lose him. They can't just let him walk for nothing. Because remember, Miles Turner's been in trade rumors for the last 10 years, or maybe not 10 years, but 7 years, and they just didn't trade him. And then now when it's okay, he's gonna stay, obviously, then they lose him. He loses and he walks for nothing. So they don't even get anything for him. And that's just brutal. I mean, it's a team that was 1 win away from a championship. You got to retain Miles Turner. I know Halliburton's out next year, but you're basically, and again, I guess they're basically punting on next season, which is fine. But Miles Turner gets a 4-year deal with $102 million. That's not that much. It's only $26 million a year. You're telling me you couldn't do that? I mean, we're seeing guys in the league nowadays that are getting $30 million plus a year. You could have easily given Miles, again, but they have strict things where they don't want to go into luxury tax. It's a little Cincinnati Bengals-esque where they're a little cheap. Apparently they only offered him $22 million a year, so they weren't even close, really. Yeah, that's not going to do it. And again, maybe they think I like to usually default to Indiana's front office knows what they're doing, because I do think they're smart people. But man, there's no who's replacing Miles Turner? Are they going to go after DeAndre Ayton? Who, I mean, they initially did. DeAndre Ayton did initially sign with the Pacers in 2022 before Phoenix matched it. He was a restricted free agent, but he did sign with Indiana, and then the Suns matched the deal. But I guess if you want to bring in Ayton, that's they're not replacing Miles Turner with DeAndre Ayton. I just don't really. If that's their move, I don't love it. I don't even think that's their move, honestly. I don't even know who they're going to go after, but it looks like they're punching on next season, which is a bummer because the East is so wide open. And then the Bucks. And we got to talk about the Bucks. I don't know if they're winners or losers. This is just a Bucks segment here. They bring in Miles Turner, 4 years, $102 million, and this comes out of nowhere. I did not anticipate him going to the Bucks. I did not anticipate the Bucks getting the best free agent in the class because they don't have any money. So when I initially saw it, I was like, how'd they get Miles Turner? And then the only way, obviously, they got Miles Turner was because they had to waive Damian Lillard and stretch his contract over the next 5 years. They did not have enough money for Miles Turner, obviously. So they had to clear up some roster spots. The shocking one was they waived and stretched Damian Lillard. So he's going to be making $22 million over the next 5 years. He'll be on their books in 2030. So for the next 5 years, they will be paying Damian Lillard $22 million. I think Wendy said it's the largest buyout. I mean, it has to be, obviously. It's easily the largest buyout in the history of the NBA. Interesting. Are they going for it? It looks like because the Bucks are better today, obviously, than they were a couple days ago. They replaced Brook Lopez, which I'm glad they didn't bring back Brook Lopez. He was unplayable in that Pacers series, largely because of Miles Turner. And they bring in Miles Turner, and now you got a front court of Giannis and Miles Turner, assuming Giannis stays, which at this point we have to kind of assume because apparently the reports are he was recruiting Miles Turner to Milwaukee. So they get Miles Turner. So the Bucks front office at least is trying to accommodate Giannis, and then they cut Damian Lillard. So they're kind of, I don't know. Maybe he's happy, maybe he's not. We'll find out if he requests a trade or not. But it certainly feels like if you want to, in the Eastern Conference, is there a better front court than Miles Turner and Giannis Antetokounmpo? The answer is no. There is not. Now, of course, they don't have a guard. They don't have anyone who can dribble the basketball. That's a problem, for sure. Definitely a problem. They bring back Kevin Porter Jr. They bring back Gary Trent Jr., who's a nice three-point shooter. But you need someone that can actually, bring the ball up the court. So we'll see what they do with that. Chris Paul is still out there. I've heard that they reached out to him, but Chris Paul is looking to move back west. So apparently Chris Paul is between the Clippers and the Suns. But Milwaukee at this point they need someone who can just dribble the basketball. they need a point guard because you can't replace Dame scoring at guard, but you can get somebody. They don't have anyone right now, obviously at point guard. So right now, I'd like to just hold off on Milwaukee because I don't know their offseason is far from done. We can't really grade it yet because we don't know if Giannis is going to stay or not, and we don't know what pieces they're going to add and replace. But right now, the Bucks, it seems like they're going because again, they would never go out and get Miles Turner if they were just punting the season. If they were going to trade Giannis and be like, okay, we're tanking, you would not go out and get Miles Turner. So it seems like they're trying to compete. would be my guess. And then obviously they cut Dame, but Dame is going to be out anyways next year. So they're basically thinking short term. Okay, let's try and go for this thing. The East is wide open. We'll bring in Miles Turner, but that'll age poorly if Giannis isn't there. So I guess they got to think they're assuming that Giannis will be there. But yeah, so that's basically the first couple days of free agency. Love what Denver did. Love what Houston did. Love what Orlando did in the grand scheme of things. Going back to the trade with Bane, the draft, and then obviously the first couple days of free agency. They bring in Tyus Jones, and I love what Atlanta did. Those are the four big winners to me. I think the Knicks were a winner because they got Clarkson and Yabusele. It was just obvious. That wasn't. I mean, not really a win. It's just they filled in the two things they needed. And then obviously the head coach. I think they downgraded a head coach, but I mean Mike Brown's a good coach. Don't get me wrong, but they had a good coach. So at least they have a coach now. I mean, I couldn't grade the Knicks offseason because at that point they didn't have a coach. Now they have a coach, so they're probably slight winners as well. And then obviously Sacramento, I don't love what they're doing. Detroit, it's hard to call them losers because they get Jaden Ivey coming back, but I just don't love the deals they made. And again, if they're losing Malik Beasley, which it seems like they're going to because of this big gambling thing, then the Pistons are immediately worse because Malik Beasley was awesome for them last year. They had Malik Beasley and Tim Hardaway Jr., and they're replacing those guys with Duncan and LeVert. Just feels like they're downgrading. But again, how big will Ivy be coming back? We'll find out. But it's just as far as like if you're losing Malik Beasley, to no fault of their own, really. It's the fault of his. But I wish they would have gotten. I wish they would have almost called up Phoenix and be like, "Hey, should we kick the tires on Devin Booker?" That might have been unrealistic, but I feel like there are bigger fishes. There are bigger fishes out there than Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert. And then obviously the Warriors and Lakers, they have gotten nothing so far besides they've gotten no size. The Lakers, if you want to count Jake LaRavia as a key acquisition, then fine. But they lose Dorian Finney-Smith, and then I think Indiana's obviously the big loser. Losing the asset for nothing is just indefensible in my opinion. But yeah, so that's basically the recap here, and then I guess we'll see what Milwaukee does. But we'll be back sometime next week to discuss. Obviously, there's gonna be more NBA offseason stuff coming. This is only the first couple of days. There's still gonna be some trades that go down. There always is. It's the NBA offseason. It's the gift that keeps on giving. It's basically a reality TV show. We'll check in on the MLB as they head towards their All-Star break, and then we'll react to what happened in Wimbledon as we head into round 3 and round 4 coming up here. And then also be on the lookout for some college ball conference breakdown previews. That will also be coming this month. But as far as this episode, thanks for watching. TestaTalksSports, we are out.